What's going on, YouTube? My name is Timur,
Matthew.
And it's Matthew. And today we will talk about the pros and cons of living in Korea. Well, to start, let's introduce ourselves. So, as I said, my name is Timur, and I currently live in a city called Chungju in Korea. And I've been living in Chungju for about 8 months. And I am a teacher. I'm an English teacher at a Hagwon here.
Yeah, and so my name is Matthew. I'm American. Yes, I also live in Chungju. I've been here for a little over, a year and 3 months or so, about a year and 3 months. And yeah, I work at the same school as Timur.
All right, perfect, man. So let's get started with the pros, shall we? All right, so pro number one, and so remember, this is all in our personal opinions of what we consider pros and cons of living in Korea. So anyways, let's start. So pro number one, for me, living in Korea, one of the pros is the medical system here is absolutely amazing. It's like top-notch quality. You get picked right away, super fast, super efficient. All your tests are done within like a short span of about 30-40 minutes. A blood test, a urine test, whatever that needs to get done, it gets done quick and efficiently. Not only that, it's also very cheap, right? So for example, if I got my wisdom teeth removed not too long ago, and one tooth was about 8,000 won, which is equivalent to about $8. But back in the Western world, that would be about what, like $100, $200?
I mean, in America, up to $200-300.
Yeah,
easily,
so
right?
that's ridiculous, right?
Canada more so.
Oh yeah. So, anyways, so that's one of the pros. Then.
All right, well, and following up on that too, if you want to go to a dentist or like you need some prescription or something, like there's so many private practices out here, you can literally just walk in and just ask them if they have a time slot. And they can fit you in that day or really whenever.
That's true.
It's super easy, right? There's
easy.
no long waiting times. Or
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
Yeah, another pro about living in Korea is, so talking about the price of things is, in America and Canada and stuff, whatever the price of a given object is, right, you always factor tax in after you totaled what you want to buy. But here, if something is 5,000 won and you have only 5,000 won, then you can buy it. Tax is already factored in, which is super nice. So outside of like discounts or sales, everything is always a nice round number.
Yeah,
so it's really easy
exactly.
to
Round
calculate
numbers.
how much you're going to be spending on
It's
things.
so convenient. I swear.
Right.
So, coming on to what he was saying as well, the cost of living in Korea is generally really low. So, for example, if I want to go out and I want to go to a restaurant and I want to get soup, you can find places. If you're lucky, you can find places that you can get all you can eat rice, but like rice with a soup for like $5, so 5,000 won. Literally, that's amazing, right? So sometimes even going out is cheaper than actually buying groceries, right? So when going to a grocery store, you can find certain vegetables and fruits which are like cheap, or some that are super on the expensive side. So going on with that too, rent, living here, it's quite cheap as well. Paying utility bills is quite cheap as well. Transportation is cheap, right? Much cheaper than the Western world. So the cost of living here is definitely generally a lot lower.
All right, and adding on to the food, here they have a thing called banchan, right, which is like side dish culture. So, you get some kimchi, you get fish cake, you get some like mixed vegetables, and you generally get this at every restaurant you go to. You get some variety of these, and they're always free, or what they call like self-service, so you can get more, so you get like a little meal with your meal, which is nice. And they're always generally pretty healthy. It's like mushrooms or vegetables or cabbage or something. So you generally don't feel bad about eating them or like getting more of them. Plus, like I said, it's free food, man.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you pay
for sure.
$6 for a meal, plus you get all these side dishes.
You get so many side dishes. It's awesome. Right. Another pro as well is the fact that the people here are just super respectful and just super friendly. People are just so approachable here. You can go to a cafe and you can just have a conversation with just the coworker there, the worker there, and it's the amount of respect that they show you, especially towards foreigners, is absolutely amazing. And when you talk, because like in our city in Chungju, there's a lot of seniors that tend to live here. Majority of people that here are seniors, old people, and even them, they're just super friendly, super nice. They always want to talk to you. and they're just so curious about where you're from and your culture and like what you like to do. So to me, it's absolutely amazing to have that openness in such an area like this.
Right. Adding on to that, I know a lot of like Americans, like we kind of think, oh, Japan and Korea, they're very homogenized countries, and most of the people that are here are native, Japanese or native Korean, whatever. So because of that, they're a little, and they are a little bit secluded, right? They're smaller nations. But generally, like you said, I found, especially with the older people, like they're super kind-hearted. I mean, they're so interested in like just kind of just the overall aspect of like you, like why you came from somewhere else. I mean, just as interested as we are in them.
Yeah.
Like, and I found that despite the language barrier, like they always do try to go out of their way to make sure like they can understand you. I mean, every Korean here has a translator on their phone because there's just that many foreigners that they probably bump into or things they want to read. I mean, like they are very interested in Western culture and English culture, and I think that does add to that sort of kindness that they extend to us, which is
100%
really something that I think a lot of Americans think like, they're stuck in their ways, but really they are interested and they do want to help you.
For sure. I also find that another pro of living in Korea in general is the fact that when you want to have your own time to yourself, you can always have that time for yourself. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is that because of the fact that you're a foreigner and you're in an unknown country, you have the ability to go sit down somewhere and read a book, or you can relax at a park or things of that nature. But in the Western world, it's a little bit different because you know everybody there, right? So you're constantly conversing with people, and you don't really have time to like kind of introspect. So I feel like living in a foreign country such as Korea, where people are just respectful in general, you have the ability to kind of step back and just be to yourself and just self-reflect, collect your thoughts, things of that nature. So
and to follow up on that, like honestly, cafe culture here is, in my opinion, super great.
Cafe culture is best, man.
I mean,
it's so good.
Compared to like America, cafes in America open up at maybe 6 a.m. for the people going to work, and they'll close, I don't know, maybe 9 p.m., 9 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Because people don't drink coffee. Well, here, cafes open at around 10 or 11 in the morning, but they stay open until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., even on weekends. And so it is really nice. Plus, the cafes here tend to be like, even though they may be slightly narrower spaces, they tend to go up. A lot of the buildings go up here, 2 stories, 3 stories. And so it is nice that let's say you want to study or read a book or just listen to music, be alone, like he was saying. You can go, spend $4 on your coffee, and you can chill at the
coffee
cafe.
is really cheap here. Tea and coffee is cheap as hell.
I mean, Starbucks set that base price, but overall, like I feel like the atmosphere in coffee shops is so much better because the people that go to cafes here, they're going to like study or they're going to do something kind of alone, whereas generally in the West, at least in my hometown, we use cafes as sort of meeting places to discuss or like to collaborate because you get out of the house.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, definitely cafe culture is amazing.
I feel like another pro as well is, I know probably a lot of people won't agree with me, but I think the weather in Korea is actually pretty good. If you're the type of person that likes really hot weather, Korea has that. If you're the type of person that likes really cold weather, you like to do a lot of cold sports, snowboarding, skiing, Korea has that. So it has definitely the extremes of both ways, but the weather here is actually pretty good. And based on like myself being here for quite a while, I think the weather's pretty decent, man. It's it's not as bad as what people tend to perceive it as, but it's okay. It's okay for sure.
It's definitely inhabitable, right? I mean, if anything else, right?
Exactly. So do you have any more pros?
No, I think that covers most of them, right? Pros.
Yeah.
So let's talk about cons.
All right, man. Let's talk about the cons. All right, let's talk about the cons. All right. So con number 1. So I think that there is, because of the fact that you are a foreigner, there is that communication barrier, that language barrier that you face, especially when you're working at like a hagwon or like a government school. Because of that, sometimes when the boss or the Korean teacher tries to articulate what you need to do, sometimes they may not be able to articulate it well enough for you to actually perform your task efficiently, right? And that can be a little bit stressful at times, but it's definitely can be overcome. You can definitely sit down with your boss because they are very approachable. You can sit down with them and you can have a conversation with them and figure out what needs to be done. But just remember that you are a foreigner and you are on their land, so you kind of have to like adjust to that barrier. You're gonna have to like kind of
You're gonna have to reach a little farther, right?
yeah. So you kind of have to make that bit of that extra effort to understand what you need to do, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and like leading on to that, obviously we teach English, and English is taught all over Korea. I mean, there are signs in English. Many businesses have their menus in English as well as Korean. I mean, you go to Seoul, there's a ton of foreign businesses. And I will say this, for a country that has their citizens study so much English for so many years, it is still surprising that a large percentage of them really still can't speak English at all, which I think is a little disappointing in some ways, given like how hard they study.
And I think that comes down to like where you're living in Korea as well. So for example, if you're living in Seoul, the majority of people there do know how to speak English well. But when you're living in kind of away from the city, more into the countryside, and that's kind of where we are in Chungju, people tend to not really speak English as often as you think they would. So you really have to like kind of make the effort to learn the language and kind of just make your life a little bit easier. And that comes across to the next con, which is small tasks can also be a challenge to do, right?
Yeah.
For example, for me personally, when I came to Korea, it was quite a challenge to just open up a bank account, right? The people there, like the only person that knew how to speak English was a security guard, and he had to like translate everything that I was saying,
and then you're translating.
and it was quite a lengthy process, right? Another example is, like one time I got sick here, right? And I was on the phone with like 119, right? I was on the phone with them, and I was trying to explain what my problems were, what my symptoms were, and they had to I had to wait. They had to get a translator and kind of translate what I was saying to the operator. So it was a bit of a stressful / a little bit of a challenging situation to get done, right? So this is part of living in the country.
I mean, even when you get down to even the bare bones, like when you first come to the country, it's like asking for a coffee, asking them to take the tomatoes off of your food, asking for a different size or hot versus cold coffee. These little things, or like where's your bread section, where's your snack section? Like these small questions actually were. I guess it's difficult, of course, because we don't speak the language, but it really makes you think like how even the smallest like tasks become kind of a chore. I mean, even when you're first ordering something online, I mean, the website's in Korean, man. I mean, that's what they speak out here. So you gotta kind of click your way through, and you need to learn all the buttons. And
Exactly.
it turns something that would take us, back home, 10 seconds. And it can turn into an hour-long process of like, okay, I just want to order this thing, like, even getting the address right, or like, where do I live? Like, what is my address?
Yeah.
It's insane.
For sure. I feel like also another con is the fact that there are a lot of rules here that you have to follow, which kind of in your mindset you probably like wouldn't agree with. So for example, if you go to like Starbucks or something and you order a drink, right, for takeout, right, and you sit in there, you cannot sit in there with that takeout drink. You have to leave. So sometimes the lady, actually all the time, the lady will come and watch you, and she'll be like, "Oh, you need to leave." And that's with not just Starbucks. That's with any cafe.
Because they charge you
right?
less for the takeout.
Yeah, exactly. So, but back in like the Western world, I've never faced that problem. No one really cares about that. You're making money; it doesn't matter. But anyways, these are small things. But do you have another example of
All right, so two things. One, here they have, in the West we can use like Glad bags or Hefty
the
or
garbage thing.
garbage bags.
Yeah.
But here they've got special bags. They've got white bags for your general trash, right? And then they have green bags for food waste, right? And the idea was to make people feel bad when they could see how much food they were potentially throwing away. But that is a big thing. Like if they catch you mixing these trashes, you do get fined for it. Like, you do get in trouble. And to follow that up, when you go to a fast food restaurant, you got to sort your trash. The liquid, the ice from your cup or any soda goes into one bin. All your recyclables go into a second bin, and all the waste goes into a third bin. And don't get me wrong, I think it's good to have restaurants, that sort of system. But because it doesn't exist in America, my brain just thinks what is this?
Like why? Well, you question it. You're like, why do I have to do this? This is so annoying.
It's a lot more inconvenient when you're cooking at home and you've got some food and you're like, I don't like, it's not enough to save, so I'm going to throw it away. But now you want to go get the special trash bag because they don't have garbage disposal here on the sink. So it's like, well, it's going in the bag, and it's just feels like
Yeah.
kind of a waste of time.
Exactly. Another con that I've faced is that since I am since I am an English teacher, you kind of have to be a little bit careful of, I guess, certain people that may try to take advantage of the fact that you are an English teacher, right? So, for example, like I visited a doctor once, and the doctor's eyes like popped wide open when he found out that I was an English teacher. And he wanted my number right away, and I immediately knew right away that he just wanted to just take advantage of the situation that I am a teacher. And you know what? It's something where you just have to make your own judgment on it. You have to just trust your own gut feeling. And I guess that's one of the skills you develop of being in a foreign country. You learn to have good, quick judgment of character of people. But that you do tend to face that sometimes, where people just try to take advantage. But
Right.
it just comes down to your own judgment, right? What you're aware of. So
Well, leading up to that, living in Korea, you would think, let's say you want to learn Korean. You think, well, you're surrounded by Koreans. This is going to be easy. There's going to be so many people to talk to. But the minute that they find out you speak English, all bets are up. They just want to speak English too, because for them, it's harder to come across a native English speaker than it is for us to come across someone who speaks Korean, which is literally everyone. So, for you, I think sometimes like you want to practice Korean, but like they want to practice English, and it's like sometimes you kind of feel like, okay, we'll just do English, like whatever then. Right?
yeah, right.
You want to do it, and it requires no effort on our part. So, I think sometimes like surprisingly, I do think like learning the language sometimes to get that practice is a little difficult because they're not always interested in doing it. They want to practice English. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So another con that I also find is that like sometimes you tend to feel lonely being here because you are a foreigner, and especially in a city like Chungju where not a lot of people speak English, you do tend to get lonely at times. So I guess it's just something that you have to just accept, and you just have to adapt. You have to adapt to. And honestly, there are definitely a lot of clubs and organizations that are available to you where you can meet people that are interested in learning English and you can make friends with them. But just be prepared to be totally independent and totally alone for quite a while, and you have to get used to that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're lucky, of course, we've been very fortunate. All the Koreans at our school are generally pretty friendly, and we become, on good terms with them. But still, there will be weekends where it's like, they're busy, they've got families, this is their home, so it's like
Exactly.
they're just going to be sitting at home. And we're lucky that we both work at the same school, but there's a lot of foreigners out there at schools where it's like you're the only foreigner, and to be honest, the Koreans don't have time to constantly check up on you.
Exactly.
So like you are just kind of floating there alone, and so I do think like if you are one of those people that really does require like kind of constant, I don't want to call it input, but constant, you're doing something with people, like you're very social, this might be a little difficult. You might want to go to Seoul or a bigger city where there either are more
Exactly.
foreigners,
Exactly.
or it's easier for you to sort of get around solo.
Exactly. And even coming down to that, the fact that you do live, if you do decide to live in a countryside in Korea, it is absolutely imperative that you learn the language, because it just makes your life a lot easier. It'll make medial tasks a lot easier. So this is pretty much our suggestion for you if you decide to ever come to Korea and you decide to go to a countryside or a smaller city rather than Seoul or Busan, right? So it's important to learn the language.
And it's a
right?
daunting task. I mean, any language is a daunting task. But
Yeah.
as English teachers, we are expecting these students, these kids. It's like you need to learn English. Like you need to pass your test. You need to do this well. So, I think on the flip side, you can sort of do the same thing. The things you're asking them, you can also do it. Like it's possible.
Of course, yeah.
You
Yeah.
live here, so you might as well make your life easier. You can learn Hangul in an hour. Right?
Yeah, for sure. It's not that difficult.
It's-
Hangul is not that difficult.
There's not a lot of characters. So don't procrastinate. Like I said, you're gonna have a lot of time, like on your downtime and stuff. So I know it's difficult, but in the long run, you struggle early, but it makes your life a lot easier later on in the future.
Definitely. So I guess to summarize, living in Korea, the cons do not outweigh the pros. There's just so many positives of just being in Korea in general. It's the nature, it's beautiful. The people are just so friendly. The environment of just being here, it's overall is just great, right? So that is pretty much pros and cons of living in Korea. So
Yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, guys.
see you later, guys.
See you later.
See ya.